Let me talk to you for a moment, heart to heart. No filters, no pretending. Somewhere along the way, many of us were taught how to love everybody else before we ever learned how to love ourselves. We learned how to sacrifice, how to show up, how to give, how to stay loyal even when it hurt us. And now, here you are, tired, confused, wondering why you feel empty, even though you've been doing everything right. Here is the truth. Nobody sat you down and told you if you learn how to love yourself more than anyone else, you will keep accepting less than you deserve. You will keep shrinking to fit into places you've outgrown. You'll keep overgiving to people who would cross the street for you. And you will keep wondering why happiness feels so temporary. This conversation is not about ego. It's not about arrogance. It's about understanding your value, recognizing your worth, and realizing that you were never created to be an option. You were created to be a priority. When you learn to love yourself the right way, you stop begging for validation, you stop tolerating disrespect, and you stop negotiating your peace. Today, we're going to talk about what it really means to love yourself, especially when you've been hurt, overlooked, or made to feel like you weren't enough. Because the moment you truly love yourself, your whole life changes. Loving yourself is not selfish. It is necessary for survival, growth, and fulfillment. Somewhere along the way, many people were taught that putting themselves first was wrong, that saying no was rude, and that prioritizing their own needs meant they did care about others. That mindset has caused more burnout, heartbreak, and lost identity than almost anything else. When you don't love yourself, you don't disappear all at once, you fade slowly. You give pieces of yourself away until there's barely anything left for you. Here, as the reality, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot inspire confidence when you don't believe in your own worth. You cannot expect respect from others when you consistently disrespect yourself. Loving yourself is not about ignoring others. It's about making sure you are whole enough to show up fully. When you neglect yourself, everything in your life begins to suffer: your health, your relationships, your dreams, and your peace. Think about how often you've stayed quiet just to keep the peace. How many times you've accepted less because you didn't want to be alone. How many opportunities you walked away from because you doubted yourself. That isn't humility, that's self-neglect. And self-neglect always shows up later as resentment, exhaustion, or regret. When you love yourself, you stop allowing guilt to control your decisions. You understand that taking care of yourself is not a betrayal of others, it's a responsibility to yourself. Loving yourself means knowing when to walk away from what drains you, even if it hurts. It means choosing rest when your body is tired, choosing growth when comfort feels tempting, and choosing honesty when silence feels safer. It means speaking to yourself with kindness instead of criticism, encouragement instead of doubt. The way you talk to yourself becomes the blueprint for how you live your life. When you truly love yourself, you stop auditioning for acceptance. You stop explaining your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't chase validation because you've already given it to yourself. And here's the powerful part: when you love yourself properly, you actually become better for others. You show up with confidence instead of insecurity, generosity instead of desperation, and love instead of fear. Loving yourself is not about becoming hard or closed off. It's about becoming grounded. It's about knowing who you are, what you deserve, and what you will no longer tolerate. It is the foundation of every healthy relationship, every bold decision, and every fulfilled life. When you love yourself first, you don't lose people, you lose problems. And what remains is a life built on respect, peace, and purpose. When you look at your life honestly, you'll realize that people don't just randomly decide how to treat you. They take cues from you. Every time you tolerate disrespect, ignore your own needs, or stay silent when something hurts you, you're teaching people a lesson, whether you mean to or not. You are showing them what is acceptable. You are setting the standard. That's why it's so important to understand this truth. How you treat yourself becomes the blueprint for how others treat you. If you don't speak up for yourself, don't be surprised when people speak over you. If you don't value your time, don't be shocked when people waste it. If you keep showing up for others while abandoning yourself, people will assume your needs don't matter. Not because they're evil, but because you've trained them to believe that your boundaries are flexible and your feelings are optional. People rarely rise above the expectations you set for yourself. Loving yourself means making a decision that your peace matters. It means saying no without guilt and yes without fear. It means understanding that protecting your energy is not rude, it's responsible. The moment you start respecting your own limits, the world around you starts adjusting. Some people will respect you more. Others will fall away. That's not loss. That's clarity. Here's something powerful to remember. People who benefit from you having no boundaries will always be uncomfortable when you finally set some. They'll call you selfish. They'll say you've changed. They might even try to make you feel guilty for choosing yourself. But what they're really reacting to is the fact that they can no longer access you the way they used to, and that's okay. Growth doesn't require permission. When you begin to treat yourself like someone worth listening to, worth protecting, worth showing up for, everything shifts. You stop chasing validation because you've already given it to yourself. You stop tolerating half love because you know what full respect feels like. You stop begging to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. Teaching people how to treat you starts with the quiet decisions you make every day. It's in the way you talk to yourself when you fail. It's in the standards you refuse to lower. It's in the courage to walk away from what dishonors you. When you honor yourself consistently, others either rise to meet that standard or they remove themselves from your life. Either way, you win. Because the moment you decide to treat yourself like you matter, the world has no choice but to follow your lead. Self-worth must come before approval. Because the moment you start needing other people to validate your value, you hand them control over your confidence, your happiness, and your decisions. Too many people are walking around waiting to be chosen, waiting to be liked, waiting to be accepted, not realizing that the most important approval they will ever need is already available to them right inside. When you don't know your worth, compliments feel like oxygen and criticism feels like suffocation. One kind word can lift you up, and one negative opinion can destroy your entire day. That's not living, that's surviving on permission. You have to understand this, people's opinions are unstable. They change based on mood, benefit, convenience, and personal insecurity. If your sense of value is built on something that's unstable, your life will always feel shaky. One day they clap for you, the next day they doubt you. One day they support you, the next day they disappear. If you don't establish your worth before seeking approval, you'll spend your life chasing moving targets, adjusting who you are just to stay accepted. And every time you do that, you lose a piece of yourself. Here's the hard truth. Most people don't want to hear approval addiction is expensive. It costs you your peace. It costs you your authenticity. It costs you your growth. When you're desperate to be liked, you start saying yes. When your spirit is screaming no. You tolerate behavior you shouldn't tolerate. You stay in rooms that no longer respect you. You lower your standards just to avoid being alone. But loneliness is not the worst thing in the world. Losing yourself is. Self-worth is an inside job. It's built when you keep promises to yourself, when you honor your boundaries, when you stop explaining your value to people who never intended to understand it. It grows when you realize that you don't need to audition for spaces you already belong in. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone who benefits from you doubting it. The moment you decide, I am enough, even if nobody applauds, something powerful happens. You become unshakable. When self-worth comes first, approval becomes optional. Compliments are appreciated, not required. Rejection still hurts, but it doesn't define you. Criticism may sting, but it doesn't stop you. You move differently. You speak differently. You walk away from what doesn't serve you without guilt. And the beautiful part is this. When you stop chasing approval, you start attracting respect. People sense when you know who you are. They may not always like it, but they will feel it. So stop outsourcing your value. Stop asking the world to tell you who you are. Decide it for yourself. Because the strongest version of you is the one who knows their worth even when nobody is watching, clapping, or validating. And once you get there, no one can take that from you. Healing begins the moment you stop abandoning yourself. For a long time, many people don't even realize they've been doing this. You show up for everyone else, but when it comes to your own needs, your own emotions, your own boundaries, you disappear. You silence yourself to keep the peace. You ignore your intuition because you don't want to seem difficult. You stay in situations that drain you because leaving feels uncomfortable or lonely. And every time you do that, you send yourself a message that your feelings matter less than everyone else's comfort. Abandoning yourself doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like saying, I'm fine when you're not. It looks like tolerating disrespect because you're afraid of being alone. It looks like overworking, overgiving, and over-explaining just to feel accepted. Over time, this self-betrayal piles up. You start feeling resentful, exhausted, and disconnected from who you really are. That's not weakness. That's your spirit asking for attention. Healing starts when you make a decision to come back to yourself. It's the moment you say, I can't keep sacrificing my well-being to keep others comfortable. That decision is powerful because it shifts your loyalty. You stop being loyal to pain, to guilt, to expectations that don't serve you anymore. You begin listening to that inner voice again, the one that tells you when something feels wrong, when something doesn't align, when you deserve better. This part of healing can feel uncomfortable because it requires honesty. You have to admit where you've ignored red flags, where you've settled, where you've accepted less than you were worthy of. But honesty isn't meant to shame you, it's meant to free you. Once you acknowledge where you abandon yourself, you can start showing up differently. You can set boundaries without apology. You can say no without guilt. You can choose rest without feeling lazy. Healing also means learning to give yourself the compassion you once reserved only for others. Instead of criticizing yourself for your mistakes, you start understanding them. Instead of rushing your growth, you allow yourself to move at your own pace. You realize that healing is not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole. When you stop abandoning yourself, you reclaim your power. You stop looking outside for validation and start building trust within. You become more grounded, more confident, more at peace. And the beautiful part is this: the more you honor yourself, the more your life reflects that respect back to you. Healing doesn't happen all at once, but it always begins with one brave choice to choose yourself consistently, even when it's hard. Boundaries are one of the clearest expressions of self-love, yet they are often misunderstood. Many people think setting boundaries means pushing others away, being difficult, or becoming selfish. In reality, boundaries are not walls meant to isolate you. They are lines drawn to protect your peace, your energy, and your growth. When you love yourself, you begin to understand that not everyone deserves unlimited access to you, and that realization alone can change your life. For a long time, many of us were taught to say yes, even when our hearts were screaming no. We were taught that being available at all times meant being loving, that sacrificing our comfort meant being kind. But what happens when you constantly put yourself last? You become drained. You become resentful. You lose yourself trying to keep everyone else comfortable. Boundaries step in to say, I matter too. They remind you that your time, emotions, and mental health are valuable and not meant to be handed out carelessly. Setting boundaries also teaches people how to treat you. If you tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional neglect, you silently send the message that it's acceptable, not because you deserve it, but because you never corrected it. When you establish boundaries, You're not trying to control others. You're simply deciding what you will and will not accept. And the truth is, people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will often resist when you start setting them. That resistance is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're finally doing something right. Self-respect shows up in the moments when you choose discomfort over self-betrayal. It may feel uncomfortable to say no. It may feel awkward to speak up. It may even feel lonely at first, but the peace that follows is worth it. Every time you honor a boundary, you build trust with yourself. You prove that you are willing to protect your own well-being even when it's hard. Boundaries also create healthier relationships. When expectations are clear, resentment has no room to grow. When you communicate honestly, you stop carrying unspoken anger. The right people will respect your limits, not because you explain them perfectly, but because they respect you. And those who walk away when you set boundaries were never meant to stay in your life long term. Loving yourself means understanding that you are not required to be everything for everyone. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to protect your peace without guilt. Boundaries are not a rejection of others. They are a commitment to yourself. And the moment you choose self-respect over people-pleasing, you step into a stronger, healthier, more confident version of who you were always meant to be. Your past does not disqualify your purpose, no matter how heavy it feels or how many mistakes you think you've made. Too many people walk around carrying shame like a life sentence, replaying old decisions and painful chapters as if they are permanent labels. They look back at who they were and decide that who they are becoming must be limited by that history. But here's the truth. Your past is not a prison. It's a classroom. It was never meant to define you. It was meant to develop you. Every setback, every wrong turn, every moment of weakness was shaping your character, sharpening your awareness, and preparing you for a version of yourself that understands life on a deeper level. You see, purpose doesn't require perfection. Purpose requires growth. If perfection were the requirement, nobody would qualify. The very things you're ashamed of today may be the same experiences that allow you to help someone else tomorrow. The pain you survived gives you insight. The mistakes you made give you wisdom. The lessons you learned the hard way give you credibility. There are people who will listen to you, not because you lived a flawless life, but because you lived a real one and found your way forward. Many people delay loving themselves because they feel they haven't earned it yet. They think self-love is a reward you get after you fix everything, after you become better, after you prove something to the world. But self-love is not the finish line. It's the starting point. You don't heal first and then love yourself. You love yourself so that healing can begin. When you stop punishing yourself for who you used to be, you free up the energy needed to become who you're meant to be. Letting go of your past doesn't mean denying it or pretending it didn't hurt. It means refusing to let it control your future. It means understanding that you are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to change your mind, raise your standards, and rewrite your story. Growth is not betrayal of your old self. It's honoring the fact that you survived and learned. When you truly love yourself, you stop introducing yourself with your failures. You stop explaining your worth through your wounds. You start standing tall in the present, knowing that everything you went through was part of the preparation, not the punishment. Your past may explain some things, but it does not own you. It does not get the final word. Purpose is calling you forward, not backward. And the moment you accept that your past did not cancel your destiny, you give yourself permission to walk confidently into the life you were always meant to live. Confidence is not something you are born with. It is something you build brick by brick every single day of your life. And one of the fastest ways to build real confidence, the kind that doesn't collapse when life gets hard, is by keeping the promises you make to yourself. A lot of people wonder why they struggle with self-doubt, hesitation, and fear. They think it's because they lack talent or ability. But more often than not, It's because they've trained themselves not to trust themselves. Every time you say you're going to start tomorrow and you don't, every time you tell yourself you'll change and then you stay the same, a little piece of your confidence erodes. You may not notice it right away, but over time, it shows up in how you speak, how you walk, and what you're willing to accept. When you break promises to yourself, you send your own mind a dangerous message, I don't follow through. And once that message settles in, you start second-guessing your own potential. You hesitate before taking opportunities. You talk yourself out of growth. You lower your expectations, not because you're incapable, but because you no longer trust yourself to show up. Confidence isn't just about believing you can do something. It's about knowing you will do what you say you're going to do. Now, here's the good news. You don't rebuild confidence by making massive, dramatic changes overnight. You rebuild it by doing small, consistent things and honoring them. If you say you're going to wake up earlier, wake up earlier. If you say you're going to walk for 10 minutes, walk for 10 minutes. If you say you're going to speak up for yourself, speak up, even if your voice shakes. Every kept promise becomes proof. Proof that you are reliable. Proof that you are capable. Proof that you can be trusted with bigger responsibilities and bigger dreams. Over time, these small wins start to stack up and something powerful happens. Your self-talk changes. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start saying, I've handled harder than this. Your posture changes. Your decisions become firmer. You stop needing external validation because you have internal evidence. Confidence grows quietly, but it grows strong when it's rooted in discipline and integrity with yourself. The most important relationship you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. And like any relationship, trust is everything. When you keep promises to yourself, you build that trust. You begin to respect yourself more. You raise your standards not just for others, but for how you live your own life. And once you trust yourself, fear loses its grip, doubt loses its voice, and confidence becomes your natural state, not because life is easy, but because, without question, that you can count on you. When you finally learn to love yourself fully, something powerful begins to happen. Your life starts to fall into alignment. Not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because you become grounded. Loving yourself more than anyone else means you stop making decisions from desperation and start making them from clarity. You no longer chase people, opportunities, or situations that drain you because you understand that anything meant for you will meet you at your level of self-respect. When self-love becomes your foundation, confusion fades, and direction takes its place. Alignment begins internally. Your thoughts, your actions, and your values start to match. You stop saying yes when your spirit is screaming no. You stop entertaining relationships that require you to betray who you are. Instead of asking, will they accept me? You begin asking, does this honor me? That shift changes everything. You move differently. You speak differently. You carry yourself with a quiet confidence that doesn't need approval, applause, or validation. People notice not because you're trying to impress them, but because authenticity has a presence all its own. When you love yourself deeply, your standards rise naturally. You no longer tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional chaos, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. You understand that peace is more valuable than proving a point. You stop forcing connections and let what's not aligned fall away without guilt. And here's the beautiful part: what leaves creates space for what truly belongs. The right people, the right opportunities, and the right environments find you when you are no longer desperate for acceptance. Everything else aligns because you're no longer fighting yourself. You stop self-sabotaging. You stop shrinking your dreams to make others comfortable. You start showing up fully at work, in relationships, and in your purpose. Your goals become clearer because they are no longer driven by fear or comparison. They are driven by self-respect and vision. You understand that you deserve good things, not because you're perfect, but because you're committed to growth. Loving yourself also aligns your faith, your patience, and your timing. You stop rushing seasons that require preparation. You trust the process because you trust yourself. Even when things don't work out, you don't fall apart, you recalibrate. You learn. You move forward stronger. That's alignment. Knowing that setbacks don't define you, they refine you. When you love yourself fully, your life doesn't become perfect, but it becomes purposeful. You stop living in reaction and start living in intention. Your energy becomes focused, your choices become wiser, and your future becomes clearer. Because when self-love leads, everything else, relationships, success, peace, and fulfillment naturally follows.